It started with a silence so deep it should have been a warning. For nearly 2 decades, Earth had said nothing. After the treaties were signed and humanity was accepted, more like tolerated, into the Galactic fold, they played by the rules, paid their taxes to the Central Federation, sent their youth to fight wars they didn't start, watched as their diplomats got talked over, ignored, then quietly replaced. And Earth? Earth just nodded. That patience, that silence, it wasn't surrender. It was recording. Every insult, every bribe, every murdered crew member, every accidental planetary bombing, every pirate raid that hit Earth's outer colonies, always conveniently unresolved. The galaxy saw restraint. What they didn't see was the ledger being filled, line by line. Commander Darren Holt remembered the day it snapped. Not when the war started. No, that was politics and cowardice in uniforms. He remembered the moment the war meant something real. It was the moment the message came through from Europa Station. His son, 17, barely a cadet, was on training rotation there. Europa was neutral, a non-combatant base, and still it had been accidentally targeted by a stray Federation strike meant for a pirate vessel. That was the story they peddled anyway. Holt knew better. He listened to the audio 3 times. The last one was just static and his sons screaming. After that, something went dead inside him. He stared out across the orbital deck of the Aegis 9, Earth's last generation battleship that hadn't seen action in over 12 years. She was half retired, rusted along the underbelly. But he saw what others didn't. Not a relic, a weapon. One waiting. The Federation declared war 2 days later, said Earth violated expansion law, that their colony movements into shared territory breached some clause Holt never heard of. It was a lie, a scripted excuse so they could push in, finally get Earth under real control. Not allies, subjects. For once Earth didn't object, didn't file a complaint, didn't even ask why. Instead, silence. But something changed. Factories that were dark lit up again. Mines once depleted were suddenly alive with movement. Recruiters hit the streets, not asking for volunteers, collecting names. Not just soldiers, but engineers, hackers, ex-criminals, old war vets who had nothing left to lose. And something else. Quiet transports heading to nowhere on the map. Civilian ships being gutted and repurposed. The world thought Earth was folding. Holt knew Earth was counting. He sat in the briefing room a week later, a worn cup of coffee in his hand, listening to the intel team explain fleet movements near Mars. 5 enemy destroyers, 2 carriers, and a recon ship loitering too close. "Why haven't they engaged yet?" someone asked. "They think we're stalling, hoping to negotiate," another officer said. Holt smiled without warmth. "They're not wrong, but it's not to talk." There was a long pause before he stood and walked toward the main display. Satellite feeds flickered, images of enemy formations, their perfect symmetry, smug in the vacuum of space. "They think patience is weakness," Holt muttered, mostly to himself. "They think because we stayed quiet, we don't know how to hit back." He tapped the screen twice. The room dimmed as a classified report opened. Project Reaper, top secret, off-grid, built in silence, untraceable to Earth's official military, 20 years in development, paid for with budget cuts no one ever questioned. 1 ship, no crew, 1 purpose, not to win a war, to end one. "They're about to find out," Holt said, voice low. What Patience was hiding. The order came without fanfare. A single encrypted command routed through 6 proxy satellites, bounced off a dead asteroid, then beamed straight into the black, where no ship should have been. And still it heard it. A machine built not to respond to commands, but to complete a grudge long buried beneath Earth's fake diplomacy. They called it Project Reaper in the early days, before funding got buried in agricultural bills and civilian infrastructure budgets, before its engineers were reassigned or vanished off payrolls, before the last person who knew what it was meant to do either died, disappeared, or, like Holt, waited. Reaper didn't launch with a crew. It didn't need one. It launched with a mission: catalog every system that wronged Earth, every admiral who signed death warrants on civilian transports, every fleet commander who called Earth barbaric, every outpost that accidentally opened fire on unarmed science vessels, every government that smirked when Earth buried its dead and asked for nothing. It had been watching. And now it was moving. Holt stood on the bridge of the Aegis 9, staring at the star map as the Reaper's location blinked once, then vanished. Cloaked. Gone. Somewhere in the void between Saturn's rings and the edge of the Centauri belt, it had just vanished from every galactic scanner. The younger officers didn't understand the weight of it yet. They still believed war would be fought the old way. Ships, weapons, lines drawn in space. They thought Earth was playing catch-up. Holt knew better. He remembered the old words his father told him after the Earth-Martian conflicts. The worst enemy you'll ever face is the man who doesn't shout, doesn't threaten, the one who just nods. That's the man who's already decided how you'll die. The Federation had forced Earth to be that man. Across the bridge, Lieutenant Soren paced nervously, datapad in hand. "Sir, we intercepted a broadcast. Civilian grade, unencrypted, from the Andari cluster. Might want to hear it." Holt nodded. The sound crackled through the ship's speakers. It was a trader, his voice shaking, panting, something breaking behind him. "They're gone. Gods, the entire blockade's just gone. No explosion, no warning. 5 destroyers, gone. I saw one still drifting, split in half like a butchered animal. They weren't shot. They were dissected. The ship just cut through them. I don't know what it was. I saw a flash, then the sky went black. Don't go near Andari. Just don't." Silence. Then Holt spoke, quiet. "That's the first warning." Soren looked pale. "That wasn't even a fleet, sir. That was just a scout group." "They sent it to test us," Holt said. "Now they know." He turned to face the room, eyes heavy with years of buried rage. "This won't be like their wars. We're not interested in holding territory. We're not building an empire. We're here to bury one." The crew stared. "They declared war," he continued. "And we've been patient. We've filed reports, held votes, played their games, but all they ever respected was force. Fine, they'll get it, but not like they think." He tapped the console again, and a classified report flashed. Operation Grave Silence. Today, Reaper eliminates the Andari blockade. Tomorrow it erases command. Not just the fleet, the senators, the financiers, the kings who thought Earth was just another planet to bleed dry. A grim-faced officer stepped forward. "That's assassination." "No," Holt said. "That's accounting." In the quiet hours after the briefing, Holt stood alone in his quarters. His son's photo still sat on the desk, creased, old but whole. The last message he ever sent was just 4 words. "They're outside the dome." Holt stared at that screen every night, and now, finally, he could answer. Outside his window, the stars looked calm, unbothered. They had no idea what was coming. The Reaper had no voice, no crew to scream inside it, no alarms, no panic, just silence and precision. That was how it had been built, to kill without sound, to erase without mess, to move like vengeance wrapped in steel. Deep inside the ship's artificial cortex, there was no artificial intelligence, only anger encoded. Thousands of names, faces, ships, corporations, worlds, all neatly filed under targets. Not combatants, participants in betrayal. The Andari cluster was only the first. The Reaper had entered their space like a shadow. No warp signature, no energy trail. Just sudden, brutal presence. And then, silence. The 5 destroyers of the blockade hadn't been destroyed. They had been disassembled. Not with explosions, but with slicing fields so thin they left the ships in clean, quiet halves. Sliced wires still sparked in open space. Bodies drifted, unburned, untouched, caught mid-sentence in corridors now exposed to the vacuum. No warning, no broadcast, no reply. The Federation's silence afterward said everything. Back on Earth, public channels were muted. The media ran old footage, pretending everything was fine. But inside the war rooms buried beneath the surface, every major official watched the unedited satellite footage, watched the Reaper appear like death itself, kill with surgical violence, and vanish again. They didn't issue a statement, because there was no one to blame. Earth had denied everything. "We have no vessel like that in active service," Earth's ambassador had said, eyes cold. "If such a thing exists, perhaps you should ask yourselves why it's angry." They couldn't trace it. No Federation tracker could follow it. No warp scans detected it. They couldn't even guess where it was now. That was the second strike. The third was on Corin Prime, a wealthy trading planet that had supplied the Federation during the embargo. They made fortunes off Earth's weakness, raising prices, cutting off supplies, selling access to colonies like real estate. They'd laughed during negotiations, called Earth a developing species with dirt under its nails. The Reaper entered orbit at 0213 planetary time. By 2:15 a.m., the entire Planetary Council building was gone. Not destroyed. Missing. 1 square kilometer of land, neatly scooped out from the surface like a spoon scraping ice cream. No debris, no crater, just a square hole filled with quiet. No survivors, no statement, just fear. That was when the galaxy started whispering. In war councils and royal courts, in military barracks and research stations, people began to speak of the ghost ship, the death machine, the last patients. No official report used the name Reaper. That name had been erased decades ago, but soldiers began saying it anyway. Whispers traveled faster than light. The Reaper. The ship Earth built when it got tired of asking nicely. Inside the Aegis 9, Holt reviewed footage from Corin Prime. The satellite feed ended in static. Again, just like Europa Station. But this time, Holt didn't feel helpless. He finally saw them terrified. His executive officer, a grizzled man named Harlan with more scars than medals, stared at the blank screen. "Sir, how far does this go?" he asked. Holt didn't answer at first. He looked out the viewport. The stars no longer looked peaceful. They looked like enemies, like watchers. "How far?" Holt finally muttered. "As far as the memory goes." He turned to face Harlan. "They fed on us while calling us allies, stole from us while smiling, burned our colonies, killed our children, and handed us pamphlets on interstellar peace. Every man on this ship has lost something, and they think they can measure our pain in treaties?" Holt stepped closer, eyes locked on Harlan. "We gave them patience. We gave them decades of silence. But that wasn't peace. That was the funeral march." Harlan exhaled slowly. "And now?" "Now," Holt said, "we teach them how humans bury the past." Across the galaxy, worlds began to go dark. Communication lines went quiet. Commanders stopped responding. No one knew where the Reaper was, only that it had already picked its next target. And Earth? Still silent. but the kind of silence that comes before a scream. The counterattack was sloppy, predictable, desperate. 3 Federation fleets were scrambled within hours of the Kurin incident, not out of strategy, but fear. Their leadership was in shambles, their senators hiding behind planetary shields, corporate moguls trying to buy their way off-world. The Federation needed to look like it was in control, and that meant striking Earth, even if they didn't know where or how. They didn't understand yet. This wasn't a war Earth was fighting. This was a reckoning. Holt sat in the war chamber of Aegis 9, arms crossed, watching as red dots lit up across the star map. Federation cruisers gathering near the edges of Sol system. "Response units," they called them, but Holt knew the smell of panic when it came wrapped in banners and polished hulls. They were coming to make an example out of Earth, expected surrender, expected begging. They were walking into a mass grave. Fleet 1 approaching Pluto, Soren announced from the console. 37 ships, mostly destroyers and carrier class, mixed species, but all Federation marked. "They think we'll meet them head-on," Harlan muttered. Holt shook his head slowly. "They still believe we care about honor." He tapped the command console. Reaper's beacon pulsed on the edge of the system, barely a flicker, then went dark again. Stealth mode, silent as the grave it dragged behind it. "They want Earth to surrender," Holt said, voice cold. "Let's give them extinction instead." The Federation's lead fleet entered the Kuiper Belt, with formation locked tight. Perfect symmetry. It was supposed to intimidate. Show control, show strength. Their admiral, a 4-armed Drazarthi named Varnex, issued the first broadcast. "By order of the Galactic Council, Earth is hereby under martial enforcement. You will disarm, detain your military leaders, and submit for review or face systemic planetary deconstruction." Earth didn't reply. Instead, the Reaper moved. It didn't decloak. It didn't fire missiles. It didn't open communication. It just appeared behind Fleet 1 like a shadow made of knives, and the killing began. Fleet 1's last recorded transmission was static, followed by a scream. Not a battle scream. Not pain. Terror. One ship sliced into 5 pieces mid-sentence. Another exploded from the inside, hull breached by a micro-warp drill that no one even saw enter. Reaper didn't fire weapons. It surgically removed enemies from existence. 37 ships, 11 minutes, 0 survivors, no bodies, no wreckage, just silence. On Aegis 9, the crew watched the data feed update in real time. Red blips vanished, one after another, then nothing. "I can't," Soren whispered. "There's no record of this kind of warfare. No tech in the archives matches what it's using." Holt stared at the map. "It's not tech. It's hate, condensed into code. They studied our weapons, not our intentions." He turned toward the crew. "Now they'll start realizing. We're not trying to win a war. We're finishing a list." Harlan nodded grimly. "Fleet 2's changing course, pulling back to Proxima Gate." "Too late," Holt said. "Reaper already tagged them." In the Federation core systems, panic spread like infection. Systems locked down. Trade routes froze. Civilian ships were grounded. Every major government issued emergency alerts, but none of them dared mention what they all knew. Reaper wasn't a myth. It was real. And it was hunting. Some called for negotiation, some for Earth's immediate destruction. Others simply went silent. Behind closed doors, the truth was uglier. No one had an answer. They had ruled with strength, but never imagined needing mercy. Never imagined a species that had learned to absorb pain and turn it into calculation. They didn't know how to fight Earth, because Earth had already buried its innocence. Now all that was left was the debt. Later that night, Holt stood in his quarters, staring at the mission board. each target now marked with a blinking red X. His finger hovered over the next name, Admiral Tyrek Voshan, the man who signed the clearance order that left Europa unprotected, who sent the pirates, who smirked in the courtroom after Holt begged for justice and got silence. "He's next," Holt muttered, "and he's going to die screaming." From the corner, Harlan spoke without emotion. "What happens when the list runs out?" Holt didn't look away from the board. "We build another." Admiral Tyrek Voshan lived in a fortress disguised as a palace. The Federation called it a security compound, nestled on a private moon orbiting the luxury planet Elistar, where the elite drank liquefied diamonds and danced while colonies starved. Voshan had earned his retirement after decades of service, which meant signing death orders from behind a desk while others bled. And now Earth's ghost had found him. He didn't know yet, not officially. He still believed this Reaper was a glitch, a rogue prototype, a myth pushed by Earth's propaganda machine. He even told the press it was likely human desperation manifesting in sabotage. But inside, he was scared. He'd increased his guards, paid mercenaries, bio-armored killers bred in war zones. He had shielded the compound with 7 layers of anti-intrusion satellites, trip mines in orbit, cloak sensors, our eye drones watching the stars. Every door, every corridor in his personal tower was protected. None of it mattered. Because Reaper didn't breach defenses, it slipped between them. In the quiet dark of Voshan's private quarters, something blinked into existence. A flicker, a distortion in the mirror, a ripple across the air. For 3 seconds, nothing moved. And then a light above the Admiral's bed flickered, just once. He woke up gasping. Old war reflexes kicked in. He reached for the sidearm beneath the mattress, but the barrel was already warm. His hand touched metal, but there was no weapon. Just silence. Then a low pulse echoed through the room. Not from outside, from inside his skull. Voshan stumbled to the floor, panting, grabbing his temples. "What is this? Who's there?" Another pulse. This one carried a voice, flat, mechanical, and human-coded. "You killed 2,304 civilians at Europa. You called it collateral." Voshan crawled toward the comm panel, dragging his body. His implants were shorting. Someone was inside his systems. The lights dimmed. The window behind him showed the stars shift, and suddenly they weren't stars. They were moving. A shape hovered above the moon, massive, silent, a black outline cutting across the galaxy like a blade. Reaper. "You left them unarmed. You watched the feeds. You laughed." No, Voshan sputtered. "I followed protocol. I was obeying. Earth obeyed too, until now." Then the room collapsed. Not exploded, not scorched. It folded. Reality around Voshan bent like paper dipped in water. Every molecule in the chamber was lifted, dissected, atomized. But only around him. Every wall, every structure gone. Voshan remained, suspended in a gravity bubble, watching his fortress disappear. He screamed. It echoed. No one answered. And then a screen lit up in front of him, hanging in the air. It showed footage from Europa Station. Grainy, silent. A boy's face looking into a camera. Young. Terrified. Holt's son. "They're outside the dome. They're not pirates. We never even had guns." Voshan sobbed. I didn't know." "You knew. You didn't care." Then Voshan felt the air thinning. Not fast. Not cruel. Slowly. He wasn't going to explode. He wasn't going to die in fire. He was going to feel every breath fade. As his vision darkened, the last thing he saw was a single word pulsing across the dark screen. Judged. Back aboard Aegis 9, Holt received the report. Not through channels, not through systems. Just a single coded ping. Target, Admiral Tyrick Voshan. Status, nullified. He closed the file and leaned back in his chair. No smile, no satisfaction. Just a hollow space where justice used to live. Harlan walked in without knocking. Elistar News Network just went off-air mid-broadcast. Entire moon went dark. They think it's a solar flare. Holt snorted. Let them think. Harlan hesitated. How many left on the list? Holt didn't answer immediately. He turned to the next name. A corporate head who sold Earth's location to raiders during the resource famines. Got rich off dead colonies. His finger hovered over the name. Enough, Holt finally said. Enough to make them understand we're not asking for peace anymore. He looked at Harlan. We're taking memory and turning it into punishment. Outside, space seemed calm again. But now the galaxy had learned the truth. Earth wasn't weak. Earth was waiting. And now, it remembers. Sergeant Larek Vaughn had seen war before. He'd seen cities fall. He'd stood on 1,000 planets, smelled the burning steel of ships cracking open in orbit, watched terrified civilians beg for food or mercy, depending on which uniform he was wearing that cycle. But he'd never felt fear like this. Not the battlefield kind. Not even the gut-sick trench dirt type of fear. This was existential. Cold. Quiet. A knot in the chest that didn't go away, even when the shooting stopped. Because no one was shooting anymore. They were just dying. Fleet 1, gone. Fleet 2, vanished mid-jump. The Andari blockade, reduced to twisted metal and human silence. Every time the Federation gathered to fight, something found them and left only absence behind. And no one knew how. Vaughn leaned against the wall of the medical bay aboard the FSV Jundari, his assault rifle propped beside him. His squad was dead. Not in battle, gone during transport. He'd been reassigned mid-mission because of a broken arm and a bureaucratic oversight. That screw-up had saved his life. And now he was alone, watching chaos unfold on encrypted channels while Command fed them lies. They're calling it an Earth terrorist campaign. The officer next to him muttered. Can you believe that? Vaughn didn't answer. He stared out the window as a refugee cruiser floated by, lights flickering, engines dead. No damage, no distress call, just empty. No life forms detected. No signs of struggle, just gone. Another ghost ship. There were more of them now, every week, and everyone had been last seen near a system Earth had history with. That night, Vaughn sat in the troop quarters, scrolling through old files, stuff that had been buried, redacted records, hidden audio logs from Europa Station. They were hard to find, but he'd trained with off-grid hackers before. He'd seen the hints. He knew the codes. The Europa footage wasn't what he'd been told. It wasn't pirates. It wasn't an accident. It was a massacre. Children, civilians, no weapons. The dome collapsed because of controlled charges, not enemy fire. He stared at the screen, jaw locked, heart pounding. He remembered the briefing they'd been given back then. Minor incident. Earth casualties. No further action needed. No further action. They buried it. And Earth stayed quiet. Now it was loud. Later in the mess hall, Vaughn found Lieutenant Casca, an old war buddy, sipping synth whiskey, face pale. They just hit Elistar, Casca whispered. Didn't even leave a crater. Just took the Admiral. Cut out his whole damn tower like it was peeled off reality. Vaughn nodded slowly. Reaper. Casca gave him a look. You believe that thing exists? Vaughn took a long breath. I think Earth stopped asking for permission. They sat in silence. All around them, soldiers pretended they weren't scared. Some got drunk. Others cleaned their weapons obsessively, like a fresh coat of oil would save them from something they couldn't see. Finally, Casca leaned in. You ever wonder if maybe we're not the good guys here? Vaughn didn't blink. All the time. By morning, rumors spread fast. A dozen outposts near the Orion Gate had gone dark. No alarms, no weapons fired, just silent black holes where space stations used to orbit. Vaughn packed his gear. He wasn't waiting for orders anymore. He uploaded the Europa files to 6 different blacknets, encrypted them, spread them across pirate relays, scattered truth like seeds on barren soil. Let people see what was done. Maybe if the galaxy saw the truth, they'd understand. Maybe they'd realize why Earth was no longer speaking in words. And if they didn't, then maybe Earth was right to let the Reaper keep moving. As he walked toward the shuttle bay, his comm pinged. One message. No sender, just a single line of text. You still remember. That means there's hope. He stared at the words, heart pounding. Somewhere out there, Earth saw him. And maybe, just maybe, it didn't see him as the enemy. Not yet. The broadcast hit every frequency at once. It wasn't sent through normal channels. It bypassed encryption layers, overrode military signals, hijacked civilian networks. Even emergency beacons went dark just long enough for the message to punch through. Every planet, every ship, every station, from the deep holes of the mining belts to the ivory towers of the Federation core. And when the signal came in, no one could stop it. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a reminder. The screen was black for a full 5 seconds. Then a voice. Male. Rough. Tired. But focused. A human voice. You should have let us grieve. A single image followed. Grainy footage from Europa Station. The dome collapsing. Children screaming. Smoke in the vacuum. No weapons. No soldiers. Just civilians crushed under the pressure of betrayal. Then the voice again. You should have listened when we asked for justice. The image changed. An ambassador standing before the Federation Council, being laughed off the podium. His speech muted by overdubbed jokes. The banner under him reading, Earth, learn your place. You took our patience as weakness. You took our silence as fear. You mistook our humanity for obedience. Footage of burned colonies, sabotaged transports, treaty papers torn apart in committee rooms, Federation officers signing off on war crimes and shaking hands with smug smiles. Now, there's a cost. The screen showed a red list, names being crossed out one by one, fleet names, politicians, corporations, systems, then a slow zoom on one final line. Your time is measured in names. When we forget the pain, we'll stop, but we remember everything. The voice paused. Then the final sentence came. We aren't at war. We're correcting a mistake. One you made when you thought Earth wouldn't fight back. The screen went dark. No music, no flags, no anthem. Just silence. And across the galaxy everyone knew this was not the beginning of war. This was the middle of Earth's revenge. Back on Aegis 9, Holt stood alone in the comms room, watching the system logs flood in. Thousands of open signals, millions of viewers, even high-security military bands had played it. Harlan stepped in behind him. They're panicking. They should, Holt replied. They'll see this as terrorism. Holt turned, his eyes bloodshot but steady. They called it terrorism when we asked for food, when we asked for fair trade, when we asked not to be bombed. So screw what they call it now. Outside, the stars blinked like watching eyes. We gave them time to make this right, Holt said. Now they get to live with what they made instead. Meanwhile, on a Federation outpost orbiting the planet Catharis, Admiral Siva slammed her fist on the table. This is an Earth-wide act of aggression! She barked. That broadcast reached military command centers. They've weaponized trauma. No, ma'am, said a junior officer, pale and trembling. They didn't weaponize it. They just stopped hiding it. Siva looked at the footage again. Her own name was on that list. not yet crossed out. Elsewhere, on a transport ship deep in neutral space, Sergeant Vaughan watched the broadcast play again in silence. Around him, soldiers didn't move. No one laughed, no one cursed. For the first time since the war began, they weren't asking when they'd fight. They were asking if they were on the wrong side. And far across the galaxy, the Reaper moved again, silent, unseen. The next name on the list pulsed red. And Earth? Earth stayed quiet. But now the galaxy finally understood. Earth was listening. And it never forgot. The Reaper's final target wasn't a person. It was a place, a symbol. The spire of Judicia, the heart of the Federation. Floating above the capital world of Virilan, it was a gleaming tower of arrogance and delusion, home to the council that wrote the laws others bled for. Where Earth's petitions were mocked, where its grief had been turned into paperwork and thrown away. They called it the seat of peace. Holt called it the crime scene. Inside Aegis 9, the final phase of the operation was underway. The crew was silent, hardened. No more jokes, no more dreams of medals or retirement. Just names crossed off a list, one by one. Now there was only one left. Holt stood before the holotable, watching Reaper's signal approach Virilan. It was slow, deliberate, unstoppable. Soren whispered, "We could have nuked that tower from orbit." Holt didn't look away. That would have been easy. Too quick. The people in that tower, they authored 1,000 tragedies and never once had to watch what they caused. He turned to the crew. Now they will. The spire had never been attacked. Ever. Its defenses were flawless on paper. Shield domes, anti-warp grids, orbital guns the size of city blocks, a 1,000,000-credit surveillance net that tracked particles smaller than dust. And yet, no one saw Reaper arrive. It appeared above the tower without fanfare. Just a single black dot blotting out the stars, a silent hole in the sky. Panic hit instantly. The Council scrambled. Evac shuttles launched. Fighters were scrambled. Orbital cannons charged. Reaper didn't fire. It opened. Like a blooming wound, the hull split silently and released a single object, a dark, pulsing sphere. It wasn't a bomb, it was a mirror. It hovered above the spire, flickering with images. Every atrocity, every lie, every name, the entire record of what the Federation had done to Earth played in full view of the people they claimed to protect. And then the message came. Not from Reaper. From Holt. Live. Unfiltered. No mask. He stood before the galaxy, older now, broken in all the ways that mattered. No medals, no rank on display. Just a man holding a photo of his dead son. "My name is Darren Holt, commander of Earth's former fleet, father, soldier, survivor." He paused, then continued. "We begged for justice. We swallowed pride. We obeyed your rules, and all it gave us was graves." Behind him, the Reaper loomed like a judgment passed. "You built a galaxy where cruelty had currency and silence was seen as weakness. So we went silent, and now that silence has become your reckoning." He looked straight into the camera. "This ends tonight." The sphere ignited, not in fire but light. It didn't destroy the spire, it revealed it. Layer by layer, cloaks fell. Secret chambers were shown, hidden war files dumped into public relays, bank transfers, death orders, genocide lists, every backdoor deal, every silenced whistleblower, everything exposed. The spire's foundations collapsed, not from weapons, but truth. People turned against it before the blast ever came. When the Reaper finally fired, one precise, soundless shot, the tower was already a corpse. Holt watched the explosion from orbit. No celebration, no relief, just silence. Soren asked, "Is it done?" Holt answered without turning. "Number, but the list is finished." Harlan stepped beside him. "So what happens now?" Holt exhaled slowly. "Now, They decide who they want to be, what kind of galaxy they want to live in. And Earth? We don't ask anymore, we just remember. A month later, the Reaper disappeared. No beacon, no trace. Some say Earth buried it beneath the oceans of a forgotten colony. Others say it waits, sleeping, listening for betrayal. But everywhere across the stars, the message remained. Earth is patient, but it never forgets. And if you make it bleed again, it will teach you why silence is the last sound before vengeance.